Hey friend, welcome back to the Vision-Driven Health Podcast, your go-to place for how to create healthy habits that last in partnership with the God who created you. If you're someone who struggles with pain in your body, low energy, difficulty sleeping, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or diabetes, it all stems from inflammation, which might sound reductionistic, but the truth is, none of those issues, challenges come to exist in your body without inflammation kicking things off. Today, I'm giving a bit more detail about what inflammation is and how it shows up. And I will spend most of the time today talking about 5 key nutrition tips that you can start implementing right away to reduce inflammation and turn your health around. Do you find yourself struggling to consistently implement healthy habits? Do you lack energy, confidence, and motivation because of stress, overwhelm, and shame for having not gotten it together by now? Friend, there is hope and grace for your health. Hey, I'm Robin Ryan McDonald, host of the Vision-Driven Health Podcast. I'm a follower of Jesus, a wife, a mama of 2, and a seminarian turned health coach. And I'm so excited that you're here. I found myself in my early 20s captive to cravings and convenience. 20 pounds heavier, super tired, with a face full of acne. I could not figure out how to maintain healthy habits until I discovered the power of aligning my choices with God's vision. 10 years and 2 kids later, by the grace of God, I'm still prioritizing my health and feeling amazing. If you are over quick fixes and are ready to feel good in your own skin, then grab a giant water bottle and let's dive on in. As a reminder, the Vision-Driven Health Podcast is under the umbrella of Naval Health Incorporated. The content on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended for medical advice. It does not take the place of medical advice or treatment from a physician. Listeners should consult their own doctor or a qualified healthcare professional for specific health concerns and questions. I think most everybody wants to feel good and have energy. And most people want that to be the case because their bodies are actually healthy. But not a lot of people actually know what to eat in order to provide their body with what it needs to be nourished, energized, and well. I created the What to Eat Masterclass to dispel any confusion on what exactly to eat in order to be well and get on track for healthy weight loss. You can get 15% off this class at visiondrivenhealth.com/whattoeat by using the code LISTENER15. You can also use the link in the show notes. To preface this episode, I want to give a quick understanding of inflammation. You've probably heard people talk about anti-inflammatory diets or the importance of reducing inflammation. But what is it? Inflammation is actually a God-given response to a problem in your body. You cut your finger, your body will become inflamed in that area to address the wound. You sprain an ankle, same thing. This is called acute inflammation. The big issue we see in the world today, particularly in the United States, is that we have created chronic inflammation. This is a low-grade inflammation where the body is constantly having to fight unnatural and harmful aspects of your health, whether that's the impact of ultra-processed food, elevated stress levels, lack of sleep, toxins in our water, toxins in the air. There are so many harmful things in the basic substances we need to survive that negatively impact our overall well-being by creating this chronic inflammation. Now, low-grade inflammation over time activates genetic propensities to disease like diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, cancer, and the like. It is so important that we seek to minimize these negative impacts as much as possible. Now, I say all of this not to make you fearful or worried about all the toxins in your life. The more you learn about them, it can feel very overwhelming. It can also feel discouraging if you've been making efforts to be more low tox in your life. But I just want you to be informed, and I also want you to know that there's so much hope. Your body is extremely forgiving. God created it so well. It is designed to survive despite challenges thrown at it. It's very resilient, and it is designed to repair and heal when provided with the nutrients it needs. So the tips I'm giving today make a massive difference in reducing inflammation in the body. First big tip, I say it all the time, is to cook at home. It's hard. There are always dishes to clean afterwards. I think that's my biggest gripe about it. And I guess also the time that it takes to do it. But it is essential to creating a truly healthy lifestyle. There is just no way around it. Unless you can hire a personal chef or find a super clean meal prep company, which also isn't usually cheap, this is what we all have to do to nourish our bodies and in turn, reduce inflammation. And I would just encourage you, if you're someone who is not savvy in the kitchen, know that nobody starts out that way. I grew up helping out here and there in the kitchen, but I would not say that I was a great cook or knew how to put together a meal. It came through a lot of trial and error. And honestly, a lot of that trial and error was when Ryan and I first got married and I either wasn't working a job or I was working a less hour job. And so a lot of my day was thinking about, what recipe will I try and cook for Ryan? Which I know not everybody has that luxury, but I will say, bless Ryan, there were many meals that he was just kind of like, not stoked about. But again, he's very gracious, very sweet, and thankfully he eats most anything that I have made for him. But it took time, and I would find certain recipes that were a hit and that were not too difficult to make. And so those became repeats. And, sometimes it just takes the decision that you're going to increase how much you cook at home. And I would recommend starting small. Maybe, again, if you're not someone who cooks regularly, go for 2 dinners a week. If you're someone who's maybe a little more versed in the kitchen, but you just haven't been making the time for it, maybe you could, same thing, start with 2 or 3 dinners a week. Maybe you could spend some time on the weekend, meal prep some breakfasts in advance so you have some quick things to go. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, like, okay, now every single meal is going to be home cooked. I would say decide what your starting point is and slowly build up. Second nutrition tip I have for you, use whole foods. It's one thing to cook. It's another thing to cook healthy. I will say if you're cooking at home, that's honestly a great start. But you do want to make sure that you are primarily using whole foods instead of prepackaged items like Hamburger Helper, pasta, TV dinners, or things like that, which honestly is what I grew up on. And I have all the grace in the world from my mom. She was doing the best she could. She didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. I thought it tasted great, to be honest. But unfortunately, even though you're technically cooking at home, those foods still they're still processed and they can be very inflammatory with those additives and things that are in there. But when you put together a meal from scratch with meat, veggies, and other complex carbs, then you're cutting out highly inflammatory foods while also providing your body with what it needs to reduce the inflammation that is already in your body. So what I mean by whole foods are single ingredient items. We're talking chicken, beef, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, broccoli, tomato, cucumber, apples. Like it's the ingredient is the food. You're not reading a label because there are no labels because it's just, that's the item. And so when you bring all those items together to make a meal, it's going to be far healthier than using a prepackaged option. So that's tip number 2. Number 1, cook at home. Tip number 2, use primarily whole foods. So far, nothing revolutionary, but I'm telling you, if everybody actually implemented these things on a regular basis, it would be a massive game changer. The third tip I have for you is to avoid seed oils, processed sugar, and refined carbohydrates as much as possible. Speaking of inflammatory foods, to be clear, you want to avoid seed oils like soybean oil, cottonseed oil, canola oil, rapeseed oil, which is technically canola oil, peanut oil, grapeseed oil, and corn oil. And I might be missing some of these more inflammatory processed oils, but almost anything that you buy packaged, even if it's organic, you gotta check the labels. Organic salad dressings are a major offender. Most of them are made with soybean oil or canola oil and you think you're doing something healthy for yourself, even though it says organic, and it's not. It's laden with these inflammatory oils. Or sauces, especially when you eat out, you can just, I tell people all the time, when I eat out, I am much more quick to go for a bunless burger than I am for a salad, because salad dressings at restaurants are almost guaranteed to have these inflammatory oils. Or if you do sauces, or if you do like pre-marinated meats or things like that from the grocery store, they're usually using these oils in some way, shape, or form. So you really got to check the labels for these oils. The only oils you really want to see on the label, which are honestly really rare to find on labels, are avocado oil, coconut oil, or olive oil. Otherwise, it's most likely going to be inflammatory. Now, the process to create these oils is disgusting. And it's filled with chemicals and all sorts of nasty steps where like they extract the oil, but then they have to burn it to a certain extent, which makes a nasty smell and makes it rancid. And they have to like treat it with a bunch of chemicals so that it doesn't taste or smell weird, so that it's palatable. Like, it's really a gross process. And that's largely how they do it for all of them, but especially canola oil. It's a Franken food. It's not healthy. I don't care what anybody says. It is not heart healthy. I will be so much healthier eating a stick of butter a day than consuming that oil. It is so true. Maybe a stick of butter is extreme, but butter is way healthier. So with that said, and also I actually will say, when you use these oils and they're heated up, so like it makes them all the more inflammatory. And that's because they go past their smoke point. It makes them more oxidated, and it causes more oxidative stress in your body. And so fried foods, that's why French fries, potato chips, anything fried is arguably one of the most inflammatory things that you can consume. So keep that in mind if you are wanting to reduce inflammation. Also, depending on what's fried, whether that's a donut or something that's breaded, then that means it has those refined carbs as well, or the processed sugar. It's going to spike your blood sugar like crazy, which also increases inflammation. So with that said, we want to be mindful of that. Processed sugar, we're talking anything that just has regular cane sugar, powdered sugar, all the high fructose corn syrup. There's like brown rice syrup. Anything that has like syrups or sugar, all that stuff is going to likely spike your blood sugar pretty significantly. Refined carbs, so that's anything that's basically made with flour, cookies, muffins, donuts, pasta, breads. You want to try to reduce these foods as much as possible. They are spiking your blood sugar, and or, like I said with the oils, those are inflammatory as well. So that might be one of the most helpful tips so far, or at least maybe a less known tip. But that's number 3, avoid seed oils, processed sugar, and refined carbs as much as possible. Number 4, eat nutrient-dense foods. Now, this might sound a little redundant to what I said about the whole foods, but I want to give you some insight on what I mean by nutrient-dense. That means you get the most bang for your buck in nutrients per quantity. So I'm talking foods like liver, heart, kidney, organ meats. Liver is arguably the most nutrient-dense food that you can eat, which might be sad to hear because generally it's found to be quite disgusting, and I can't say that I disagree. However, there are awesome alternative ways to reap the benefits of the nutrients in organ meats, like taking supplements, organ pills, which is actually something that I do. I can get you a link for the company that I get mine from, Heart and Soil. I can get you, I think it's 20% off. So that link will be in the show notes as well. Another way that I have been able to cook with organ meats and still find it palatable, you can search online. Some grocery stores have it, but you want to look, sometimes it's called like an ancestral blend, where you'll have ground beef that is blended with those organ meats. And so it's kind of disguised. And then I'll use that with just regular ground beef and mix it together. And then I'll make it a more flavorful dish. Maybe it'll be a meatloaf, or maybe I'll make taco meat out of it, or I'll put it in pasta or something like that. I usually use chickpea pasta. I know I just said pasta can be inflammatory. And I do chickpea pasta or lentil pasta because the only ingredient are chickpeas or lentils. And also they are high in protein, which is great. They also do have a decent amount of carbs, but the higher in protein is definitely appealing to me if I want a pasta-like dish. I digress. That is how I try to include organ meats if I use the actual meat itself, but mostly I just do the organ pills. So check out the link in my show notes for that. Other nutrient-dense foods include beef, eggs, and I know right now in the United States at least we have this whole egg shortage. It is a good incentive to get chickens. I will say almost a year ago next month, we got chickens, and I gotta say, I'm very grateful. We've got quite a bit of eggs coming in. We also got some new chickens in October or November. Yeah, November. And they just started laying. So that's also exciting. So we're doing good on the egg front. If you can find a local farmer, or even find a neighbor, post in Facebook groups, see their eggs are around. They totally are. It's just a matter of finding the right space for them. But with that said, eggs are a powerhouse when it comes to nutrient density. The yolks, which have been so demonized, so has beef, honestly, but they are actually very nutrient dense. They provide what many plants, in fact, depending on the nutrient, all plants cannot supply. And they are low glycemic. They're not going to spike your blood sugar significantly, very minimally. And honestly, it tastes great. Also, cow milk, I highly recommend making sure that you get organic, or if you can, raw. Yogurt, same thing. You want to get organic. Cottage cheese. Those are, and when I say yogurt, I mean, you can do any kind, but Greek yogurt is particularly high in protein. Pork, which I was honestly a little surprised was on the nutrient dense side, but I guess it's closer to a red meat, which the redder meats are higher in nutrients, which you may be surprised to find out that chicken is actually not that nutrient dense. When it comes to choosing a healthy meat, beef is your best bet, in my opinion. You could argue that fish could also be. Fish gets a little trickier just because of, depending on the sourcing, it could contain some unfortunate contaminants or mercury levels. Your best bet with fish, again, in my opinion, is wild-caught sockeye salmon, which a lot of places do offer. And we will get in our meat box ourselves. But I do recommend fresh fish. You want to make sure it's not farmed. You want to make sure that it's line caught and or sustainably sourced. Raw cheese, lamb. These are very nutrient dense foods. And then dark leafy greens, the cruciferous vegetables. So that's broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, foods in that family are very nutrient dense. And the lowest in terms of nutrient density, the least nutrient dense, I should say, were seeds. Like I said, chicken, whole grains, nuts, and refined grains. Now, are there nutrients in those foods? Absolutely. Are they devoid? No. They're not like at the other list that I said to avoid. I'm just saying my tip for you is to be aware of what's most nutrient dense and try to make those your priority when you're putting together a meal. Unfortunately, our current food system says that you should make whole grains and or chicken or refined grains and things like that the majority of your meal, which that would be robbing you of more nutrients. Those are the things we want to keep to a minimum. Now, like I said, these aren't necessarily things to avoid or even cut out. I still eat a lot of chicken. I had chicken tonight, actually. But I try to do more beef. I probably still honestly do more chicken than beef, and that's just from a cost factor. So, that's where our family's at and why that's kind of our choice. So you get to take these things into consideration, look at your budget, see what works best. We are on the lookout for a deep freezer, keeping our eye on deals at Costco or see if we can get a secondhand one because we want to buy part of a cow and keep it in the deep freezer, which is a much more affordable way to get quality beef. Just a extra pro tip for you there. But if you look at what you're eating as a whole, you want majority of what you eat to be these kinds of foods, nutrient dense, eggs and avocado. So I want to give you kind of like a rundown of what your day could look like if you're pursuing nutrient dense foods. So for breakfast, you have some eggs and avocado. Maybe you also saute some of those leafy greens with your eggs, and you do that instead of processed baked goods or bars or just going through Starbucks or getting coffee. For lunch, you can have salmon salad that you make with salmon, lemon, some avocado oil-based mayo, because otherwise the mayos have those inflammatory oils. Make sure it's purely avocado oil. I like to throw in some garlic powder, salt, and lots of dill. Super tasty when you mix it all together. I'll have that with some cucumbers or stuff a bell pepper with it. The red and yellow ones stuffed with that are amazing. The crunch of the bell pepper and then the creaminess of the salmon. It's so good. Then maybe for a snack, you'll have an apple and almond butter, or maybe an apple and some raw cheese for a snack, kind of like a mini charcuterie situation. Dinner, slow cooked beef, Brussels, and potatoes. And then maybe you look up a paleo cookie recipe for dessert. And I say paleo, I'm not suggesting you eat a paleo diet. I used to eat strictly paleo. I've shifted more into a primal, but I don't even know if you could necessarily categorize the way I eat. Again, I prioritize whole foods. Paleo is just meat, fruits, and veggies. It's no grains, no dairy. Whereas primal does do quality dairy and will do certain kinds of grains like wild rice or sourdough. So that's kind of more so where I find myself. But with that said, I would usually recommend looking up paleo desserts just because they're going to be cleaner. They're going to use natural sugar or natural sweeteners. And so it's going to be a lower glycemic option, and it's going to be gluten-free if you're trying to reduce grains. So it's kind of an easy way to filter recipes if you want to try and find something. And then if, we're not to the point where we're cooking most of our meals, which is totally fine. If you are going to eat out, you can still try to make it a healthy meal and make choices that are aligned with what I've shared so far, where you're prioritizing, nutrient-dense foods, whole foods, and not necessarily the things that are like fried or, involve a lot more sugar or things like that. And I will also say if you're eating out, you can just try and set a standard for yourself of, okay, I'm only going to eat out once a day, and the other meals I'm going to make sure are really nutrient dense. So you might say like, all right, I'm only going to eat out so many times a week. And so you can kind of try to start to be aware and intentional with that. So to wrap up this tip, these foods, the nutrient dense foods that I've mentioned, contain what your body needs to combat inflammation and to function optimally. And so I can't emphasize enough how important it is to consume these because they actually, when I say combat inflammation, they have the antioxidants to combat the oxidative stress of the toxins in our environment, but then also the toxic foods that we've consumed. Eating these kinds of foods really will lower your inflammation and set you on a good trajectory. Next tip that I have for you is to drink water. If you already typically start your day with coffee instead of water, this is your strong encouragement to change that up. You want to try to drink at least 20 ounces before your first sip of coffee, which I know is so difficult and kind of annoying. And I find this tip and standard annoying myself when I'm just wanting to enjoy some coffee in the morning. But this will actually give you more energy in the morning and make you less dependent on coffee if you are. I personally only have coffee as a treat or just like for enjoyment. I don't have it every single day. In fact, I try to keep it to like once, maybe twice a week. And it's not even first thing in the morning. And so if you're someone who wakes up and you're like, I can't function until I have my coffee, that's not normal. Or maybe, it's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. And starting your day with 20 ounces of water, you may find will actually give you a lot more of a jolt of energy than the coffee, or maybe equal. And then, you have your coffee later. But I also do recommend taking electrolytes. Hydration isn't just drinking water. We do need electrolytes, and taking electrolytes actually also helps provide energy and balance your nutritional needs. The other thing about water that I actually haven't talked about as much on the podcast, I do talk about electrolytes pretty frequently, but you want to make sure that you're drinking filtered or purified water that isn't from a plastic water bottle. We are already exposed to so many microplastics as it is, and it's so important to try and reduce that intake as much as possible. Tap water is nasty. It is disgusting. You don't want to know what's in tap water. I I mean, I will tell you a little bit. I mean, just think about it. Lots of medications are dumped down the toilet. Lots of medications are dumped into the water system. Up until just recently, and actually maybe still in a lot of places, they put fluoride in it, which people don't think is an issue, but actually that can cause thyroid issues. We think of the piping throughout the infrastructure of our city, your home, depending on how old your home is. Like, think of what the water's traveling through just to get out of your faucet. Like sludgy, slimy, nasty, bleh. So you really want to make sure that you have a filter, whether that's a whole house filter, a reverse osmosis filter on your sink, a Berkey filter. We have one of those. We actually just got a whole house water filter. So can't emphasize that enough. It makes a big difference just in reducing your toxic load, which if your body has less toxins to combat, that's going to reduce inflammation just because you're not putting the stuff in that causes inflammation. And so when it comes to like what to carry around for your water, a stainless steel water bottle, there has been some controversy on the healthiness of that because I guess there's potentially a lead leak issue in the way that those bottles are made. Your safest bet is glass, which is not super helpful for transportation. So when I'm home, I use a giant glass mason jar with a straw, but I do use the stainless steel when I'm out and about. But again, we're doing the best we can with all these things. And you want to try to consume at least half your body weight in ounces of water, up to 100 ounces. Whether some factors that play into that amount is weather. Like if it's summer and it's super hot, you might need more. Pregnancy or postpartum, or if you're breastfeeding, physical activity, all these things come into play. So just keep in mind, this is a general rule. It's not like a prescribed thing by any means when it comes to water. But by keeping yourself hydrated and by drinking water, you allow your body to function the way it's designed, particularly when it comes to the elimination of waste. If your body cannot process waste, it cannot reduce inflammation properly. Your organs, when we're thinking about, your liver, which is focused on detoxing, your kidneys, and all the other organs inside of you, they are dependent on your body's ability to get rid of what otherwise would be inflammatory in your body. So hydration and water consumption are super important for this process. So friend, those are my top nutrition tips for reducing inflammation. And so to recap, we've got cook at home, use whole foods, avoid seed oils, processed sugar, and refined carbs as much as possible, eat nutrient-dense foods, and drink water. I hope you found this helpful. I tried to be as detailed and specific as possible. I mean, sure, we could have gotten into more details, but I wanted to keep it brief and helpful. So if you did find this helpful, I would love to know. You can always email me at visiondrivenhealth@gmail.com, or if you have questions about anything that I ever say, or if you have topics you'd like me to address. I love getting emails from listeners. Again, be sure to check out the What to Eat Masterclass. You can get 15% off by using code LISTENER15. Otherwise, feel free to share this with a friend. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Vision Driven Health Podcast today. I hope this episode inspired you, supported you, and blessed you in some way. If it did, it would mean the world if you would leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode on your social media. The more reviews and shares this gets, the more people can be blessed and encouraged in creating a Jesus-centered, sustainable, healthy lifestyle. If you want to hang with me and other Jesus-loving ladies who are creating healthy habits that last, be sure to join my free Facebook group, the Made Well Mastermind. Use the link in the show notes to join. Be blessed with hope, joy, and health. I'll see you next week. Again, the Vision Driven Health Podcast is under the umbrella of Made Well Health Incorporated. The content on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended for medical advice. It does not take the place of medical advice or treatment from a physician. Listeners should consult their own doctor or a qualified healthcare professional for specific health concerns and questions.